Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the next in the series of doing business in. This time it is Spain, so I'll say hola as well this morning. I've been practicing that all morning, and I know I've probably just embarrassed myself, but best to start low and work our way up. We're really excited about today's webinar. We had for those of you that tuned in to the doing business in Germany, we were really happy about it, and we're really confident that we're going to be able to build on that and have even a better webinar today and insight of the Spanish market. So again, this is a great collaboration between myself and Tony at the Football Transfer Forum and the European Football Agents Association as well today. So we've got a fantastic day to get through this morning. It's going to be an hour and a half. It's going to be 90 minutes. But as always, it's gonna fly by. A couple of bits of housekeeping before we get into everything. First of all, if you could just put in the chat box that we're coming through loud and clear, and you can see and hear us, that would be absolutely fantastic. And also, if you do have a question, we want to get as many questions from you guys this morning as well, to all of the panelists. Please try and put those questions in the Q&A section, okay? So not the chat section, the Q&A section. Ali is also on here from the European Football Agents Association, and she's going to be moderating that chat box as well. So any queries that you've got, any problems that you've got, get those in the chat, get your questions in the Q&A box. Okay, let's have a look at what we're going to get through today. We've got an exciting morning ahead of us. Okay, so yes, for those of you who don't know, I am Ryan McKnight. I am a football industry consultant here in the UK. Tony and I have been working together for many years now, and collaborated closely on things like the Football Transfer Forum, which have been really exciting and great to work on. Just before we get going, we're going to hear from Tony very shortly, and also hopefully Roberto Branco Martins, the General Counsel of the European Football Agents Association as well. Then we're really thankful that we've got three fantastic guests on the webinar today. First up, and we're speaking to him just after 22 this morning, is Rodrigo Garcia Lucas, lawyer at LAFA, extremely experienced sports lawyer in Spain, and we're going to be mining Rodrigo's extensive mind on understanding the Spanish market. And so good morning to you, Rodrigo. How are you?
Fine, fantastic. Nice. Good morning to you all. I'm really grateful for being here with you.
Fantastic. Excellent. Then just in the middle section, as we always do, we're going to have a company profile, you know, a sort of very brief 5-minute introduction to a company that we feel is doing some really interesting work in the football industry. And today's guest is former Real Madrid commercial superimo, Jose Ramon, who is now managing director at Player Lens. Player Lens are a fascinating platform for both clubs and agents, so it's going to be interesting to hear more from those guys as well. And then at about 11:15, we're going to be hearing from Simone Rondiani, co-director at Wasserman Spain. Simone, it's absolutely brilliant to have you. I know you've just flew back home yesterday. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. How are you?
Thanks, Ryan. Everything fine. I'm happy to be here. Just spelling well Rondanini, please. Your accent is fantastic.
I told you.
Jose Ramon and the Rondanini. All was fantastic.
Simone, I'm a good, honest black country lad from Wolverhampton. I was never going to get close to any of those names, was I?
Thank you for the invitation.
Fantastic. It's unbelievable to have you here. Absolutely brilliant. So, Tony, I'm going to come to. Roberto is here. Good morning, Roberto.
Good morning, Ryan. It was a bit of a struggle. You see, we have learned to work with online webinars and meetings, due to COVID and Corona. But now in my inbox, I might have 15 or 16 links to various meetings, and I can't remember anymore where I have to log in, when I can use the cam or the mic. So I'm sorry for that.
It's you're just too popular. You're just too popular, Roberto. We need to work on that. Roberto, I'm going to come to you first. Sort of very briefly, this is the second in the series of these chats. So a brief word on that, and a very sort of brief word on the work that you've been up to since we last saw you.
Well, quite a lot of work from an European Football Agents Association perspective. As you know, Ryan, there is a consultation process going on at the moment. FIFA, although EFA always stresses, and that's correct, that on the road to this process, we haven't been properly consulted. And that feeling still exists amongst EFA and its members. We do feel the necessity to give feedback on the draft regulations that have been sent to stakeholders in international professional football. When I say draft regulations, I mean the regulations concerning the activities of football agents. That's already a novelty. We're going to stop working with intermediaries, but you're all going to become football agents again with a specific license. So I think that profession, the old-fashioned profession, will come back. And well, in general, I believe that's a good thing, and that's supported. So we've been very busy in streamlining the process on the feedback of consultation with the members. That's taken up quite a lot of activity. And for the rest, some general consultancy on how to work with the current regulations, because that's still a very big issue nowadays. And well, that's a perfect bridge to these seminars. That's why we still believe that it's very important to have these kind of seminars of doing business in the various countries. And as mentioned before, that's very much supported by EFA. So we look forward to develop these seminars together with you, these webinars.
Fantastic.
Ryan, if you could just allow me to give special thanks to the students of the Hague University of Applied Sciences, because EFA, in collaboration with the Hague University, has developed a specific minor on international sports law and agency. So you're not only speaking to current agents, but also to the agents of the future. So happy to have them online today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Roberto. Tony, I'm gonna move to yourself. How are you? What have you been up to since we last saw you, and thoughts on today?
Yeah. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for that. Yeah, I think we should just jump into the subject, because I'm really excited about finding out more about doing business in Spain. As an agent myself, I've done a few bits and pieces with players, and even a head coach coming from Spain into England, but I'm really all ears to learn a bit more. I saw an interesting report from FIFA. FIFA looked at what happened in the last transfer window, and they compiled a little report about it. And Spain was the #1 country in the world in terms of selling players, transfers, international transfers. So clubs in Spain in summer took in 560 million euros incoming transfers. The clubs probably didn't spend as much themselves, but they were #1 for selling players in the world in the FIFA report. Wow. So I think that's really, really interesting. Obviously, we've seen what's happened with the pandemic, and a lot of people not looking to spend money in transfers, not looking to dip into the transfer market. And that's particularly true in Spain, but we're going to find out from the experts a little bit later. I've got a poll to launch that just illustrates my point, that really when you see the numbers of the size of the transfer fees coming out of Spain and then the ones coming in, it really illustrates the point. So I think let's get cracking. I could talk a little bit more about the Football Transfer Forum. Those of you who don't know about it, we're a live and on the web event and insight sort of business. We're based in the UK and it's mainly for the English and Scottish football markets, but we're getting more international people coming on all the time. So what I'm going to do, I'll leave it there just with that teaser about the transfer numbers, and I'll launch a couple of polls and you crack on, Ryan.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Tony. I think that's set us up absolutely perfectly to introduce Rodrigo. Good morning, Rodrigo. How are you?
Very well. Nice talking
Excellent. To you. Good stuff. We really appreciate your time. Just before we get into the nuts and bolts of the specific questions I want to ask you, could you just sort of briefly give a description of your experience and your career?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm a founding partner of Laffer Abogados, which is a law firm specialized in sport football. We are mainly focused on advising players and agents all around Europe. We're more focused on the player side of things rather than clubs. In Spain, it's better to advise player and agents than clubs. They pay better. So we usually the company, the law firm is now 11 years old, and we believe in an integral advice to players, both from a legal and taxation point of view. I think it's general, but at least in Spain, lawyers has become more needed than in the past, partially because of all the troubles connected with taxation and image rights, etc., and because contracts are getting more complicated, and because of the civil liability that agents have in Spain in case they commit any mistake. So I would say that we have become necessary for the transaction. Our law firm is quite connected with transaction, with advising on the deal. So I would say that we start the advice when a deal becomes possible and not in the last days. And I think it's the first advice for agents, at least in Spain, is that you really need to know the basics before you enter into a negotiation, because otherwise you're going to have some troubles and difficult to solve in later stages.
Okay, thank you for that. So Rodrigo, where I want to start is I want you to give your assessment on where you feel the Spanish football market is at the moment. It's really interesting for us, certainly in the UK. We see a lot of the sort of political issues that are going on at Barcelona. We see similar impacts in Spain to what we've had here in terms of COVID as well. What's your assessment on the current state of play of the Spanish football market?
Well, I'm kind of concerned, I would say. Maybe this is a general idea, but the reality is that I think Spanish football is becoming less competitive in comparison with other countries. Mm-hmm. First of all, because our taxation is going to increase, and it's already high. We're talking about a range of 45% taxation, and there's going to be an increase for next year. And I think that new regulations like Ley Crestita in Italia are making our market less competitive. Obviously, this connected with COVID situation, especially for big teams like Real Madrid, Atletico, and Barcelona. This is making things complicated for these clubs. So we are facing a new salary cut in most of the clubs for this season. We already had a salary cut last year. In average, most of the teams made salary cuts of between 5 and 10, 15%. But the thing is that this year, this season, we are starting to negotiate and to suffer new salary cuts derived from COVID. But I think it's not only because of COVID, it's probably because at least in some clubs like FC Barcelona, things were not done well in terms of managing and in terms of paying enormous salaries and not making great deals in new players. So the situation is kind of concerning, and that is why people that do business in Spain need to know about this before they make a deal.
Absolutely. Moving to some of the practicalities, Rodrigo, what is the current legislation and regulations in terms of how people who want to operate in Spain as an agent, how do they go about it? How do they register? What does it cost? What are the preconditions? And how is it policed?
It's registration in Spain is quite easy. It's not as easy as in England, but I would say that after England is probably one of the easiest place to get registered. And obviously in comparison with Germany and Portugal, it's much easier. And obviously it's much easier than in Italy or France for sure. So the registration can be done partially online with a payment of 861 euros. It covers you the full calendar year, but if you register right now, you have to bear in mind that the registration will only cover you till the 31st of December, and you will need to pay the full registration fee. I would say that the only complicated things would be that you have to have a personal interview with the Spanish FA. Honestly, it's just a simple interview, a 5-minute interview, and basically they want to recognize you and identify that you are the person that has submitted the application. And we face sometimes troubles also in connection with demonstrated that the individual representing a company, he has to be an employee or he needs to prove that he is fully empowered to be registered. So sometimes they're going to ask you for powers of attorney, or they're going to ask for the, they will probably ask for the some paperwork connected with the incorporation of the company and your registration as representative of that company. But that's all. It's basically a proceeding that might take you 2-3 days if you talk with them, and it's not even needed to use a lawyer for this, honestly.
And do you have any idea of how many agents roughly are registered in Spain? You know, in England, it's sort of about circa 3,000, Tony. Can't hear you, Tony.
Yeah, we've got about 2,500 to 3,000 registered agents in England, but that number shot up from 2015 when FIFA deregulated. You know, we probably had about 500 at the time, so it's gone up almost 5-6-fold in England. I don't know how it's looking in Spain, Rodrigo.
Not sure about the actual figure, but I think it must be around 1,500.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I think that obviously the really active ones are much slower. That's much less. So it's a really fragmented market in Spain, but it's changing. I think that, and I think this is something that we're watching at some deals in connection with acquisitions of agencies, and it's becoming a smaller world. And I think that with the new FIFA regulation, this might be a trend that will follow within the next years.
Rodrigo, we've seen some of the bigger agencies that are based in England being taken over by American talent agencies. Have you seen anything like that happening in Spain yet?
Yeah, partially. I think it's going to be it has happened. We had in the past we have a couple of Chinese investment in agencies. Obviously, the purchases of Stellar and other companies has also affected their Spanish market, and some of the Spanish agencies has been also been acquired. Yeah.
Rodrigo, it's interesting you mentioned Stellar, because obviously Stellar is Jonathan Barnett's company and David Manasseh, and they were very UK based until Gareth Bale arrives in Real Madrid. What effect did that have on the agency market? Because I know they opened an office in Madrid as well. Did that have much of an effect?
It has an impact. I mean, the fact that a new culture with companies like Wasserman or Stellar, which are UK based and with let's say an American way of doing things, it has an effect, but it has not changed the way business are done. I would say that English agencies has a reputation of being aggressive in terms of commercial. I think that there is, I would say in Spain that the agent fees, my impression is that are lower than in other countries. I would say that the general idea 5 years ago was that 5% commission on fixed salary was, I would say, the average. And I would say that this has changed in the recent years and is partially connected with the fact that new foreign agencies are in the market. So I think this rate has changed to 7-8% as an average, and probably is because new agencies are coming.
So Rodrigo, would you say that an average in Spain is sort of 5%? I know from the FIFA TMS data, they'd got a international transfer sort of commissions at about 6.7%, 6.72 to be precise. Is that about the market rate, the going rate?
Yeah. Well, it all depends on if we're talking about a free agent, a free player, or we're talking about a big transaction. One thing that is really common in Spain is that when you bring a player, sometimes you try to get a percentage on the future sale of the player as an agency, which obviously gives you trouble from a FIFA perspective. But I would say there are ways to do this without breaching the FIFA regulation. So it depends on the player you bring, but this is something that you have to bear in mind sometimes when you bring a player to Spain, especially if it's a young, talented player, maybe a revenue based on the future sale of the player, because we are becoming, Tony, you mentioned the figures before, we are becoming a selling market rather than which is bad for us.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I noticed what Valencia did in the transfer window. You know, they sold players and they hardly spent any money whatsoever. You know, and is that just an economic reason, Rodrigo? Is it economics?
Yeah, it's an economic reason, but it's also based in the fact that we have really strict rules from our La Liga. So we have an internal financial fair play, which is really, really strict. I would say it's probably the toughest one in Europe. So the clubs are under a full surveillance, which is good, and probably will help us to recover of this pandemic from an economic perspective. But obviously are forcing the clubs to make deals which were not ideal. I'm thinking about maybe Ferran Torres' transfer to Manchester City, which I think the figures were around 25 million euros. And obviously this will not have happened in the past. But our strict controls is an issue, and clubs are being forced to sell players, and probably will be forced to sell players within the next couple of markets.
Excellent. I want to just bring it back to something that you spoke about a little bit before. Or before that, you can see the poll results there, everybody, and Well, it was a bit of a close run thing, but the David Silva move from City to Sociedad is obviously out on top. I mean, absolutely unbelievable start from them this season. But Rodrigo, coming back to yourself, I want to come back to how you see this relationship between salary cuts and whether there is a real or non-relationship between the change in taxation position as well. How are clubs going to marry that? Because not only are they looking at the reality of the gross salary coming down, but players are going to get a sort of second hit with increase in taxation as well. I mean, that's a real sort of double whammy in terms of not making your market very attractive to come to, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. On the one hand, we have a situation in which our labor law, we have a labor law, a general labor law, and a specialized labor law for sportmen. Everyone is an employee in Spain. Okay, there's no doubt on this. But the special labor regulations for sportmen, for players, does not include all the general regulations, especially concerning termination of contracts, especially allowing unilaterally employers to change the labor conditions and diminish salaries based on economic, productive, or organizational reasons. So the reality is that clubs will intend and are intending, in fact, we are in the middle of a negotiation with FC Barcelona. I'm acting as advisor on behalf of the players, and we are negotiating a unilateral, this is public, a unilateral modification of the labor conditions of the players, which includes potential salary cuts or at least deferments on the salaries of this season. And they are using a legal tool which is basically thought for general employees, and it's not bearing in mind the special relationship of a player, which is a temporary contract, short-term contracts, and for example, with this tool, a club is potentially entitled to diminish 30-40% of the salary of this season, and might be entitled to do so. Wow. Or is entitled to terminate an employment contract with 20 days per year of services severance pay, which is obviously a really low severance pay, or they can make a collective dismissal with the same 20-30 days per year of services.
And Rodrigo, is there anything that you can do to help your player? Because those terms, for us, particularly in England, they sound very, very restrictive and very, very much in favor of the clubs.
Yeah, there are many things you can do. First of all, you can try to negotiate in the contract to have a guarantee in case the contract is terminated from the club. You can perfectly negotiate this. The reality is that nobody thought 3 years ago. Dismissal is quite unusual in football, or was unusual in football. Why would you terminate a contract if the player can leave for free? But the reality is that now many clubs are thinking, okay, I'm paying this guy 15 million euros. He's not doing well. He's not going to get a bigger contract elsewhere. I can get rid of him and maybe I'm going to save some money. So first of all, you can protect in the contract. Secondly, this type of proceedings, the one, for example, is Barcelona is initiating. It has an advantages for the players is that if a club unilaterally reduce and in some cases defer the salaries, the player is entitled to leave the club because, okay, it can be legal to defer or reduce the salary, but I'm free to leave. and then obviously no rescission clause or transfer fee would apply, and the player can leave with a small severance pay, but obviously it's free. So let's imagine Messi, or let's imagine.
I was just going to say, Messi's on a free. That's great news. That's great news for English clubs.
So obviously there are ways to protect this, and that is why there is a negotiation in place, and also you can always challenge an objective dismissal or a dismissal and trying to recover the full salary. So things are not so bad, but the thing is that we don't have an advantageous labor legislation in place for players. I would say that our contracts are not protected. Okay.
So Rodrigo, what do you think the eventuality of that? What will the conclusion of that be? Do you think there'll be a change in law to reflect players' unique position?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the sportman law, it's a 1985 law, and it's not so easy to change. And especially we have a government that I don't think is thinking about protecting players. Our government has a view that players are millionaires, which is not always the case, of course. And I don't think that we will see legal changes on this. You need to fight before court, so at least try to protect your contracts.
I'm really sort of tempted not to ask you about Messi, because obviously I know you're acting for them, which is wonderful. But obviously English clubs are obviously interested in not only Messi, but obviously the state of play in Spanish football. Do you get the feel from the players as well that they're looking externally for their next move, and there's a kind of potential exodus of the top talent currently in Spain?
I think so. I think that some clubs like probably FC Barcelona might be forced to sell some of their players if they want to recover. And we have seen this in the summer market. I mean, Real Madrid has sold really good players like Reguilón to Tottenham, like Xavi to Inter Milan, and they haven't hired anyone. So they have done the job properly. Atletico Madrid has also made some agreements in connection with salary this year and has cut their investment. And Barcelona will probably need to do the same. I mean, I would say this is public again. I mean, economic situation of Barcelona is horrible. So I would say that there are going to be great advantages and good bargains for English clubs wanting to bring or take players from Spain. Unfortunately for Spanish football, of course.
And Rodrigo, what about guys, agents on this webinar who are thinking, I've got a player and he could go into La Liga or the Segunda? Is it quite easy for those guys to come into the country? Is there any restrictions on non-EU players and that type of thing as well?
Yeah, we have obviously all European Union players are no longer they are considered national for registration purposes. We have a limit of 3 extra-communitary players, but for example, in our 3rd division, which is called Second Division B, there is no limit in connection with non-European Union players. So sometimes agents connected with clubs use this category to bring players from other countries. So that's
Rodrigo, did they still need to satisfy any kind of work permit regulation?
Yeah. They need to. But that we have a special regulation which allows that the registration of players is usually really an automatic proceeding.
Okay.
But obviously, if you bring a player, let's say from Nigeria, and you intend to pay him 1,000 euros per month, you might have faced troubles in connection with obtaining this registration, because they might say, I mean, you're bringing a player or you're bringing a regular employee. So obviously the salary, the level of salaries has to be adequate. So you don't have problem with that, with such registration, which is not obviously easy in Second Division B. It's normal in 1st and 2nd division. it basically takes you 1 day to register a player. Okay, we have more trouble with coaches, obviously, as you know, because of the JIRA panel, etc. You know that situation, but with players, you don't face troubles.
And in terms of non-EU players, Tony, doesn't it sound strange, doesn't it, that we're going to be in that boat in a matter of weeks?
Yes, yeah.
Not literally in a boat, but in terms of once you're into Spain, once you're into the sort of second, third division, what's the general time frame for naturalization into Spanish citizenship? Is it 3, 5, 6 years?
It depends. I mean, if you come from South America, we have, obviously, because of our past together, we have special rules, and after 2 years, you can start the process to become a Spanish citizen. For other countries, it's much longer period. We're talking about 10 years.
Rodrigo, me and Ryan are thinking about becoming Spanish citizens, so we'll be on the phone after this.
Yeah.
You can always marry a Spanish citizen, and that
sounds equally as good. That sounds equally.
That sounds great, but my wife, I don't think would be too happy with that. But
I don't think she'd mind, Tony. Rodrigo, I'm really keen to speak about one point that we haven't spoke about yet before we run out of time with yourself. And this is the non-payment of agents or the payment of agents. How good are clubs and the industry in Spain overall in terms of being transparent and speedy in payments to agents? What's the situation?
It has never been good. Okay, there is a tendency in Spain to delay payments for agents. Okay, and obviously with the new intermediary, well, not new, but the existing intermediary regulations, this has become a worse situation. So my advice is always try to protect the payments from an economic perspective. A legal perspective, you need to protect them and try to put some, I would say, a higher interest rate in case of delays. So and a good dispute resolution proceeding, such our internal EFAA proceeding or civil courts. I'm in general more favorable to civil courts, to ordinary courts rather than sport courts. This is a personal view. So you need to protect this. You have to insist. This is something that we have seen with foreign agents getting into the Spanish market. I mean, Spanish agents usually are really flexible or were flexible with clubs because they always think they're going to have a next move. So they kind of delay, but this flexibility allows them to be well seen by the clubs. While
so
UK,
they're getting a bit of goodwill by not pressing for the payment on day one.
Exactly. But foreign agents basically after 2 weeks they say, okay, where's my money? I want my money. I want to initiate legal actions, give a deadline of 7 days to these guys. And I would say clubs are kind of surprised with this aggressive approach.
Okay.
But my advice is that if you have a debt, you really need to try to collect him as soon as possible. Be persuasive, be insistent, because they won't call to your door to pay you. So that's something that agents are the last in the list. Okay.
As usual.
Yeah. One final question before we leave you, Rodrigo, and it's one question that's come through on the Q&A box as well. So guys, keep getting your questions in on there. In the past, we've seen some sort of public fallings out in regarding to image rights. A number of top players falling foul of the law, and players being dragged back to Spain from other territories to come and face justice. What is the situation with image rights in Spain? Because at one point it seemed out of control. Has that been reined in?
Basically, the situation is image rights do not exist anymore. Okay, image right structure. The thing is that we have a law, and the law exists, in which 15% of the remuneration can be paid through an image right company. The thing is that in 2012, with the economic crisis, Spanish tax authority changed their view on this type of incomes, and they started initiating inquiries connected with demonstrating that, in fact, these image rights payments were salary. And in some cases, they brought that to, especially when the image right structure was an offshore, was settled with an offshore company, they initiated criminal proceedings. Yeah. So the reality is that we don't have anymore. It's too dangerous, and I would not recommend at all to settle an image right structure, at least to receive the salaries. You can settle. You can set up an image right structure to exploit your rights and to exploit probably your Nike deal, or to explore some commercial opportunities you might have, but not anymore. And I think this is a process, and we act a lot in the English market. And when I was doing deals 5 days ago with this problem on my table in Spain, I always told my UK accountants and the clubs, you're going to have the same problem. And the reality is that you're having the same problem at the end of the day. You're not facing criminal cases in connection with image right payments, but the reality, as far as I know, and I think I'm right, there are a lot of troubles connected with image right payments in England. Yeah. So my advice is that you really need to have a good structure, and you have to understand that tax authorities around Europe are well connected. They share information, they share data. So it's not a Spanish problem. In Spain, it became really public because of the criminal cases, because it involved big names. But I think it's a general problem, at least in England. And I would like to finalize with something. I mean, I talk about taxation, and of course, you have to bear in mind taxation, because there's going to be an increase of 2 and 3 points in our personal income taxation. But on the other hand, I think it's relevant for you to know that we have a special non-resident regime. So for players or for any employee, so if you spend less than 183 days and your earnings in a calendar year are lower than the amounts you received in another country, depending on the country, and this works for UK, it works for France, and it works for Germany, it doesn't work for Italy, we have a special taxation of 90%. So when you see some of the transactions you see lately in Spain, is sometimes it's a loan from UK for one season, but in reality, during those 2 years the player stays in Spain, he only pays 90% taxation. Or if you bring a player to Spain and you bring him after the 1st, 2nd of July, you might take advantage of that special taxation during the first 6 months. So it's not everything is not so bad from a taxation point of view. You can also take advantage of this special taxation.
Fantastic. Rodrigo, I want to thank you for your contribution there. I am going to title you the Messi of Spanish industry knowledge, Spanish football industry knowledge.
Not even Cristiano.
Yeah, no, just take it. Just accept that. Just accept that. There's lots of questions for you as well, Rodrigo, which we'll get to at the end of the webinar. But for now, thank you so much for that very insightful and detailed insight there. Much appreciated. Tony, I'm going to hand over to yourself now, and we're going to introduce the guys from Players Lens. Jose.
Yeah. Hello. Yes, Norman. Let me connect my camera.
Hi. Yeah. So hi, Jose Ramon. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, Tony. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, Jose.
Are you okay, Jose Ramon? Are you okay?
Very well. Very well.
Listen, before we get into the fantastic Player Lens platform, just tell us, I mean, obviously you were at Real Madrid for a long time, and Real Madrid is obviously one of the best clubs in Spain, one of the best clubs in the world. It's iconic. It was full of Galacticos at the time. Tell us a little bit about your time at Real Madrid.
Yeah, so very quickly here. So, well, I had no plans to work firstly on the sports industry. No, I come from the finance industry, and I joined Real Madrid when they set up the strategic planning direction. It was in 2007 when I joined the club, and we were working on the strategic plan for the club. That moment, it was something quite new, no, for a sports entity to thinking on the long term, thinking on that sustainability of the operations, and new ventures, new innovative ways to make maximize the revenues in the club. Working on the development of the sports city that, as you know, Real Madrid moved some previous years ago into a new 120 hectares of land close to the airport. And from there, on the last 4 years, I had the chance and opportunity to work as head of football operations in the club.
Yeah.
And then it allowed me, to learn pretty much about all the business and deal mechanics for the global football industry in terms of transfers, loans, player renovations, intermediaries, FIFA regulations, etc. No, so well, after that time, I think it was the perfect time to look for new ventures. I definitely wanted to bring my know-how, my value into some new ventures, and then I had the chance to meet the company founder, Player Lens, with Lee in Madrid, and it's such a good time now.
Yeah, so the Player Lens platform, obviously you guys are friends of the Football Transfer Forum. We know you and Lee, who's the co-managing director. Just tell everyone on the call, on the webinar, just a little bit how it works. What does the platform do? Yeah.
So the platform is born aiming to generate the global connectivity in the football transfer market system. Firstly, it starts as a vision from Lee with his background from the trading industry, the stock market. Not looking at players as stocks, but looking at a lack of connectivity and efficiency and transparency, behind. So here, the first step was to generate the right foundation of clubs to stay in the platform.
And how many clubs have you got, Jose Ramon?
Around 600, 620 clubs, more or less. Okay.
Oh wow! Is Real Madrid one of them? It's got to be one of them.
Well, he plays one of the players in Croatia, actually.
All right, great.
This last summer, on loan.
Perfect.
From the B team.
So you were linking clubs to players to other clubs, and you're sort of a tool for the transfer market to make it more efficient.
That's it. At the end, we aim on this. Let's say the 600 clubs. Let's say that the 45% of clubs, the breakdown that I normally give is that 45% of clubs are in Europe. The other 45% of clubs are in Americas. We have most of the clubs in South America using the platform. And let's say a 10%, which is actually one of our priorities, between Africa and Asia. No.
Oh wow!
For that, just on starting this pandemic stage now on this year, we decided that it was the right time to go into offer the platform for all the intermediaries out there. So we developed the functionality where all the intermediaries around the world were able to show and advertise the players that they represent. So if I am the agent for a player, I can advertise my player in the platform, and this player at the end can be a free agent player with no contract, so they can be striking the platform. And if the player has a professional contract in a club, it's important because we only deal with professional football players. So we will always respect the club opinion. No? We will always ask the club to get his permission on putting the player in the platform. Okay, I would say in most of the cases there is no issues. When there may be some issues, is more related to a bad relationship between the agent and the club. But what I would say is that I won't say 100%. But
so Jose Ramon, obviously we've got a lot of the agent community watching this webinar, and how can they? We've shared a link with a YouTube clip of how the app works, so that gives you a bit more detail. How can people get hold of you? How can they get a good look at this thing?
Yeah, so very simple here is that, well, they can take a look at the video on the website. Okay, they can ask, and some of our team members can show the demo. No, but just let's speak just on a very quick success case that
that'd be great.
Spain. So when we talk about doing business in Spain, we have the competition. You know that we have the first division, the second division, and then we have the second B division, where actually it comes like around 80 clubs, and it's the federation who is responsible to manage this competition is actually restructuring the whole competition on a similar way to the League One and League Two in England. Okay, so this competition always have a minimum of around eight players who have to be under 23s. Okay, and they will always compete at the top level. So I mean that they will not compete on a reserve league. Okay, so what we saw is a growing interest from players, clubs from England and overseas to bring, and intermediaries, of course, to bring the players to play in Spain, aiming to develop these young talent, because all the clubs in Spain for these under 23 positions that is requested by the regulations, the clubs need competitive players there, no? And because there is no real limitation on non-European players at this category, it's an opportunity for many clubs to, of course, to make some business if they get some of the right of the player by buying the player at the end of a loan, or depending on the negotiation that they take. But it's an opportunity to increase the revenues for these kind of clubs, develop competitive careers for these players on a pretty high competitive environment as is the second division, even more when next year will be like, it's called Liga Pro. So there will be 2 new categories for this competition. And there is a growing number of intermediaries asking to bring players from England, Ireland, overseas into
Well, Jose, I'm going to just stop you there. We're obviously big fans of Player Lens. I've got some players on there as well. It's a truly global tool. Obviously, your knowledge and experience in Spain puts you at the forefront of that particular market as well. I know you're in other markets as well. So listen, we could make sure you stick around. There might be questions for you later. But thank you so much for that, Jose Ramon. And I'll hand over to Ryan. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, guys.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Tony. Just as Tony has said, Ali has put a YouTube link in the chat, which is a video description of what's going on and how the app works. I think it's such a great idea, and I know the guys are getting a lot of success on it. So that's absolutely brilliant. Keep your questions coming. We're going to have plenty of time at the end for lots of questions. So keep those questions coming into the Q&A. And there's lots of great chat going on in the chat box as well, which is also great to see. But let's move on with our next guest, and welcome Simone. And Simone, I'm not even going to attempt your second name, your surname this time, because I've already embarrassed myself once. But just once again, thank you so much for being with us. Before we get into the nuts and bolts about some of your thoughts and detail on what's going on in Spain, please just share briefly, your story, if you could.
Yeah, hello. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks to everyone that are at the moment looking this forum. It's really nice. Basically, I just want to be short about my story in football. Most of the agent, I would say the 90% of the agent, always says that I could be a football player, but unlucky for my knee, for my ankle, I didn't.
That's my story, Simone. My story.
Yeah, I know. That is 91%. My story is a bit different. So basically, I started as a coach. I studied till the UEFA Pro license of coach, and then I done academy. So from this academy, I bring up a player that was a big talent, and then we need an agent, and we didn't feel there was some good agent around us. So for that reason, I studied to become an agent. Then I also study science sport managing, and then I started my career first as an agent, a little agent in the world, and then step by step I grew up with my little agency, and then I come on in a big agency, and now again I step up to Wasserman. So basically, my view is starting as I love football, so I just want to be able to work on that. As a football player, it doesn't work. As a coach, it doesn't work. So I tried as an agent, and it looks like it worked a little bit.
Yeah, so you'd obviously developed an agency yourself, and as you say, you've developed, and you're now at Wasserman, which obviously sort of big agency, looking after a lot of top players. I guess my first question for you is really the same question that I had to Rodrigo. How do you assess the Spanish market at the moment as an agent? I know you're very busy. I know you're traveling about lots of places, but how do you assess the vibrancy and buoyancy of the market at the moment? Are you positive about it, or are you a little bit more subdued or negative?
But basically, if I say that this situation, I mean the COVID situation and this financial situation, obviously break down every market, especially in let's say in my company and in my way of work. As you know, I have a lot of work, and we didn't see this let's say this big problem until now. We are working a lot. Obviously, we should understand, and also our players should understand that the financial condition changed. So right now, renovation of the contract is not like 2 years ago. The pandemic changed completely the world. But I didn't see especially something that I could say this completely changed. Obviously, cut of the salary of the players and all this kind. But this happened in every family. It's not only football. I mean, every sector are affected about the pandemic. So especially in football, the problem could be the bigger problem could be is that traveling is every day more difficult, and we cannot stop. So we did a lot of video calls, video conference meetings, even a renovation and contract starting with video calls. But this never happened before. But this is a new way of work, so you have to adapt to yourself on that.
Absolutely. What do you think are the ingredients that people need to be a successful agent in Spain? I know you've lived the vast majority of the most recent period in Spain, but you've operated in other areas. Are there particular things about working in Spain that are different from other territories?
Look, I didn't say that I'm Italian, so I worked a little bit also in the past in Italy. I could see some difference between Italy and Spain. also did some deals outside of these two countries. Be an agent. I think that to be an agent, we have to. This is my way of obviously, because it's so easy to say I could be an agent. Like Rodrigo said before, in Spain, you just you could wake up in the morning, have a friend that is a football player or a friend of football player, and you can say, okay, let's try because if you see the wages of players and the fee that agents could get, you can hope to be an agent. So and it's easy to go and talk with the Federation of Football in Spain and pay the tax and just start as an agent. In England, it is even easier because you just have to fill a form and finish.
Yep.
In Italy, you still need to make an exam that I did, for example, in 2005. I think it was the last year. So you have to have passion to be agent everywhere. So not only in Spain or Italy, you have to have passion. You have to be transparent, and in my opinion, you don't need to look on money. It's I know it's difficult, but you should want to be an agent because you want to help the career of the football player, and to help on this career, you have to study, to have to learn how is football, the regulation, to have some legal and taxes partner like could be Rodrigo, who helps you in everything. And this is basically everywhere, not only Spain. In particular in Spain, I could say that Spanish language is very welcome because many sport directors that are fantastic, but doesn't speak other language than Spanish. And I think also that it's easy and better for each party to speak in the same language because it is a different affinity.
Simone, so some of the sporting directors, obviously, how easy is it to get access to them? Obviously, you are well networked in the industry. Is it quite easy to get into certain clubs? I know there's some special clubs in Spain with different, I love the model that Athletic Bilbao have. Then there's the Girona, which is a city group, Guardiola sort of thing. But, how easy is it to get into these clubs in Spain, to speak to the right people?
Look, you made a two different questions, and I think a two different way. Go to and speak with a club is easy. I mean, you don't need anything else to a phone number and try.
Yep.
And the big problem probably is to give to get to the right person. So the right person sometimes is because you speak sometimes with a sport director, a technical director, but it's not the one that take the final decision. No? So basically, it's a relationship that should start from the bottom part and just go up, because I could say in all clubs there are human on the other side of the phone. You just need to start the relation. The relation would be always better if you increase the relationship that you have with them. So and it's impossible for an agent to have a relationship with all the clubs. It's obviously it's impossible. You can have a relation, but you couldn't have a good relationship. So for that reason, I think that if you do deals, let's say if you do deals or try to do business with the club, the relationship is increasing, and this is you have to have players. Just start. I start with youth. So in the first part of my life, I had many relationship with clubs, only youth part, and right now my dedication is on senior So basically, it's all sport director.
Simone, I think you make
Yeah, right.
an extremely important point, and a few people have applauded you for making it on the chat. Is that, you know, if you're going to be an effective agent in any territory, you really have to have this 360 view of the game, and you need to live it and understand it. Just give us some insight in terms of what you do to develop your knowledge of in the different areas, whether it's in the finances of the game or the playing or the coaching games. How does that manifest itself? What do you do to improve your knowledge, to do the learning?
Particularly, I take partners with me. I cannot manage everything. So if I need some legal question, probably Rodrigo could be the best one.
Yeah.
And then
Rodrigo's the Messi.
It's true. Tax advisor. You need a analyst. You need an analyst because I can give some. As I told, I have a UEFA Pro coach, but I can give some tips to clients. But you have to be, like you say, 360 degree in terms of football. So it's not easy. It's not just take the ball and play. You have to know everything. And it's difficult to know everything, and it's difficult because all the rules change. So in my opinion, for example, when because in the past, I think everyone knows that in the past, FIFA decided every agent should have a license. So you have to do a course, and the course was very, very, very difficult. I think in my year in 2005, over 400 people, just 61 get the license. So you need to study, you need to have a knowledge about football, but you cannot have a knowledge about everything. You should have something that you could get inside, but in other things you need some other partners. This is absolutely.
Simone, can I ask you about, obviously we've spoken a little bit about the summer transfer window and the sort of financials in Spain. Now us in England, we get really excited about the transfer windows, also the January window. What's the January window like in Spain? How busy is it? Is it going to be busy this year? I'm asking you more than one question, so you have to forgive me. What's your thoughts on January?
No, Tony. The problem, I think, that in January, the summer was particular, and in January normally every year is particular. This year will be more. I don't see many changes in clubs, because clubs already in Spain cannot make movement. We see already in the summer. So I don't think that many deals will happen. I would see more than some clubs that have some difficulty in the bottom of the table. Will try to take some strikers, central midfield, offensive midfield, or something like that. But I don't see movement
and Simone, just to go on from that point, and it was something we spoke to Rodrigo about. You know, are you managing the expectations of the players? You know, when new contracts come to be renegotiated, are you trying to manage those expectations because of the situation, because of the finances?
Yes, this is a very particular point, because when you talk with a player and say that you cannot expect transfer. For example, I just make an example of that happened this summer, and I have a player who want to leave from his club, and he has and the club has an extension of 2 years. So the club want to exercise the extension, and the players say, no, I would prefer that this not happen. Please try to find me out a club. And my answer, it was like in May. my answer was, look, right now with this situation, the best is to have a contract, because I think that in the future it will be always worst. The situation will be worst, and this happened. Now that the player is giving me thanks because of this advice. I mean, players doesn't want to go to have less salary. That's normal. Player think that he is the player like it was before, and probably now he play even better. But the problem is that financially, you have to read a newspaper. You have just to see news. Every club has problems, so we cannot push a club to get a renovation, a higher level renovation. It's very difficult.
And Simone, are the players talking about maybe looking abroad? You know, we're always here in England with the Premier League. You know, it's a big financial powerhouse. Are the players now thinking, well, what are the options abroad?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And we, in the company where I am, we are really strong in everywhere in the world. But the thing is that sometimes the player doesn't fit in the league. So it's also I mean, I know that it's difficult to say to a person, you're not ready for that. I know that it's difficult, but you have to be honest, and you have to find out the way to say that to the player, because I think this is a situation of respect. If I see you as a Messi and you are not a Messi, I cannot treat you as a Messi. I mean, it's really particular, but it's true. Sometimes agent, we have we are afraid. We are afraid that we can lose the player. But probably you can lose the player if you don't say the truth to the player. Because if you say to the player, yeah, you are good, and finally you didn't fight a club, then the one that are bad is yourself. So better is to say, look, you have to change this if you want to go to the Premier League. Otherwise, there is no, it's not an option.
Do you see a big opportunity for foreign players coming into Spain then, Simone? Perhaps on the willingness to take perhaps lesser wages? Obviously Wasserman's connected, like you say, all over the world. You know, maybe is that a strategy for you guys, getting sort of international players opportunities in La Liga?
Look, we have a different level, like in La Liga and Segunda División. For example, the Segunda División is a little bit difficult because not all the clubs has scouting, foreign scouting, so they don't know players from other clubs. In La Liga, obviously, there is the opportunity to bring players in. In this particular situation, I think that every market are more looking for their market, and Spanish market is a very good market. I mean, the Spanish player has a very good reputation. So normally, if you have, let's say, an example, if you have a striker that is good in youth, you probably right now would prefer to take him up in the first team, give him a contract of the minimum before take a player that is playing very, very good in let's say another league, and there's a similar level, and it will cost 100% more because you have to pay a transfer, you have to pay more fee, you know. So basically, I think Spain, but not only Spain, I think in Spain and in all the world, the clubs would like to take care of their youth department.
One final question, Simone, and Tony and I had a brief chat about this in the last few days. One of our favourite clubs in Spain is Bilbao, Atletico Bilbao. Traditionally such an unbelievable model, devoted to that Basque region of Spain with their players. They've loosened the structure, haven't they, in recent years in terms of who can play for the team? What's going on at Bilbao? Will they go back to that sort of purely Basque-only players in the future, do you think? Or can you see that slipping away and it just becoming like any other club?
Honestly, I could not answer to this question because I love the club, but I never had a conversation with them. Never, because
Rodrigo,
yeah, maybe I can jump into this.
Yeah.
They slightly changed. They never changed the rule. I mean, it's true that they are more flexible with obviously including players from a small region in France, which they consider that culturally it's the Basque country, and they, as far as the player has been grown up in the club or in the Basque country, they can accept players from La Rioja, which is a close region to País Vasco, or Navarra, which also they consider culturally is Basque country. But they haven't changed the rule, and honestly, people will not allow them to change the rule. So I don't see any future change in this unless they get into really sport troubles, which is not the case. I mean, they made good deals selling players. Is obviously they've got a narrow market, and they overpay Basque players, which is something not so good. But the only thing they would need to change, in my opinion, and I was involved in a lot of payments of buyout clauses of players there, is that maybe they should change the approach to sell players, because they never allow the players, if they are interested in the player, they never sell the players. You need to pay the rescission clause. And this is something that in the long term, in my opinion, it's affecting them, because if you go there as a player, you know that maybe you will never leave. So a player needs to know that at some point he can leave. So we have a lot of cases like Kepa, like Javi Martinez, Ander Herrera, which forced they needed to pay the rescission clause. So I think that's the only thing they would need to change.
Brilliant, thank you, Rodrigo. Simone, just to come back to you, just as a final point, what would your advice be in a nutshell to people thinking of coming and doing activity and business in Spain?
Advice. I think that I mean, you mean like now in the pandemic, during the pandemic, or
just in the future?
General?
Just in the future in general, yeah.
Yeah, like we said before, resume it before, is just to have the knowledge of everything. One particular thing is, for example, when you have the possibility to bring a player here, just look at everything, because, for example, here every contract that we talk is about gross, not net. And the difference is very, very huge. And there are some tips, like Rodrigo said before, to get to reduce this cut on the net salary, because it's really important to know the club, to know what the player is going to earn, and look at the future. What I mean in look at the future is do a deal is easy. Probably, I mean, easy is not easy completely, but if you have the right player and the club want it, just go and do the deal. The thing is that you have to think about how the club, how the team is playing, if it's the right player for this team, all these kind of things that help you to not have problem in the future. And regarding salaries, just check everything before say, okay, let's go ahead, because the player never look at the gross amount, always what he could have in the pocket, net
Absolutely.
amount. So this is my advice for everyone.
Fantastic. Simone, thank you so much. Stay on the line because there's some questions directed for you. Tony, if we could get everybody back in now, we'll look to spend the last 10-15 minutes getting through the questions, and there are quite a few questions, so I will try and get through as many as possible. If you have got a question, please keep them coming through. The first question, I think Rodrigo, you asked to answer this one live, and it was a question from Sun Jin, and it was a question: what's the average salary in the second and third divisions in Spain?
Well, for second division, we have a minimum salary which is around 80,000 euros. For first division, yeah. so just you know, it's 160 something K. For the third division is not minimum salary. In terms of average, and maybe Simone can correct me, but I think that for second division we're talking about 200,000 euros. Would be the average. For third division, the range is between, I would say, a minimum of 24,000 euros to a maximum of 100, 150, but for really few players.
Okay, interesting. Rodrigo, in the last webinar that we did, one of the big aspects was Germany's sort of unique take on injury pay, and how actually it's actually a very, very short period that players are guaranteed their wage. What's the situation in Spain in terms of injury pay? Obviously, here in England, we just take it for granted. You know, if you're on a 4-year contract and you do your ACL in game number 1, you're getting paid your contract right the way through. What's the situation in Spain?
One of the good news of Spanish football is that our collective agreement covers in full the salaries in terms of injury. So it's really unlikely that obviously if you have a leg cut, the process of having the full salaries might be jeopardized. But in general, any long-term injury, you are covered by the collective agreement. Clubs are obliged to pay the full salary. So that's really one of the best things we have in Spain for players.
Yeah. A question to you, Simone, from Tom, who was asking, you know, agencies such as yourself, like Wasserman, how do people go about trying to come and work for you if they've not had a football career, or they've not got any particularly strong interest, working history in the game? What can those people do to be attractive to potentially end up working as an agent or working with a big agency? What are the steps that they can take?
Yeah, the step is easy. Watch football, so start to be a scout, let's say. Study because you have to study a lot to have the knowledge about, let's say, the football general part, and then start dealing with youth players. This is also what I did from the start, you know.
Yeah.
So we, for example, in Spain, what we do sometimes is just take the right person, because there is also a question of feeling with the person, and build him up. You know, start as I told you, as a scout, watch football, make reports about football player, then take some youth players and work with them, then start to be in meeting with clubs together with some agent, and then I could say in, let's say, 3-4 years time, started to be an agent of some players. Is not just
it's a long
process.
It's a long time. Yeah, it's a long process.
Jose, lots of questions around player lens. So I'm just going to try and morph them into a sort of singular question. What has your platform seen in terms of the result of coronavirus and the impact that it's had? Has there been any evidence that you guys have been able to see, maybe in terms of players without a club or clubs not looking for clubs? And a second question: what are you guys doing internally to to sort of improve the accuracy of players on there? I know you're working with different organisations. Is that something you're going to do more of?
Yep. So the first question is regarding the COVID year. No, I think that for us and in general for football, it was one of the main reasons why it helped to start transform the football transfer market system. No, it was on a time where there were no trips, no meetings, and no big transfers, an increasing huge number of free players where clubs were not able to pay salaries, or where clubs were canceling contracts, no renovations. So there was a significant increase in the number of free players looking to be in the platform, to be advertising in front of all the professional clubs, where of course there was a huge increase on the number of transactions and demand of free players and loans during this transfer window, as it was said by our peers, or the experts in the sector, on this increasing number according to the financial restrictions that the clubs are struggling there and they have to face. So for us, it was positive, because it was one of the main reasons where football faced one of the biggest challenge in life, and I think that we had the platform ready to start this transformation into the digital system. And regarding the accuracy, the data, the sources of information, of course, we are working with several source of information providers, aiming to get the max number of leagues availabilities for all our players. In some exceptions, what we are always providing into our users is that we can help them to build their own profiles through uploading the videos of the players in case that we cannot collect those videos, or trying to put some information manually on the system. So we aim to help our users. At the end, our client is the most important. And of course, we may struggle in some leagues where there is no data on some very emerging leagues, but I think it's more an exception. But of course, we are always happy to help them by uploading their videos, or helping to ourselves speaking to our data source providers to see if we can get any additional information on their players or whatever. But this is important. This is why one of the reasons we always deal with professional players, and also most important is that we deal with plus 18-year-old players, because we want to respect always the FIFA regulations regarding the international transfer market system.
Yeah, thank you, Jose. Another one for you, Rodrigo. There seems to be a bit of interest for your sort of commentary on the transfers of Rakitic to Sevilla and Suarez to Bilbao. This notion that they've basically gone for free, which is obviously an unbelievable situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all relies and is connected with the economic situation at Barcelona. I was involved in another exit of a player almost for free. Well, there's a sport side of things on that. We're talking about players with big wages. But at the end of the day, it's not only a sport decision, it's just an option they've got to try to diminish the debt they've got. It's a loss of talent, but it's not going to be the last. I mean, we have to be clear on this. FC Barcelona will need to adjust their squad, and will need to leave many players to leave, probably, if they don't do things properly, on a lower transfer fee than expected, because they leave. In the past, they took the wrong decisions in the summer market. They had the chance to leave players with big wages to leave, and they did not allow it. They had offers for players that they didn't accept. So at the end of the day, it's impossible to maintain this policy. I mean, you cannot be a big club and save money at the same time. So that was a market where Real Madrid did very well and Atletico did very well, but Barcelona, for any reasons, they didn't make the necessary adjustment, and they will need to do it in the future.
Just one final question, I guess to you, Rodrigo, and you, Simone, from Jorg. What is the reaction of the Spanish agents and people like yourself, Rodrigo, about the impending changes to agents, to intermediaries, and would you and do you support action against it? You know, particularly in relation to the potential capping of fees. Do you guys see that as really a restriction on trade? And you know, what's the general feel? Simone, I'll come to you first. What's the feeling within your agency about the potential changes of regulations?
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's like right now it's really difficult to understand and to see what's going on. There is a big change also in percentages and fee. I think if FIFA is going to do it, it's because it's the right way. So I think that we have to adapt ourselves on that. It's nothing else. I know that in football and being an agent, we move a lot of, and in terms of money, yeah, splendid, let's say. But if things change, we have just to adapt ourselves.
Yeah, Rodrigo, you know, it's hard to imagine that FIFA, you know, one of the reasons for deregulating in the first place was the inability of one organization based in Switzerland to be able to control what's going on in South America, Southeast Asia. Has anything changed since 2015 that means that it's going to be a fair fight for the territories that are willing to play by the rules in the future?
No, I mean, to be honest, they changed the rule in the past because they were not able to control 60% of the transaction. So they decided, okay, if I cannot control anything, let's kick them out of the football family. Okay, so that was a horrible mistake. Now we have a market where lawyers, financial guys, fathers are involved, which is horrible for the market because we are not the right people to do this job. As Simone was saying, you need to be an agent. People believe that can be an agent just because you can register easily, but that doesn't imply anything. So that was a huge mistake. Now we have intruders in the market, and they realize of this. So most of the decisions they're taking in the new regulations, I'm in favor of them. I'm in favor of a clearance system as the one you have in the FA. I'm in favor of tough exams and regulations to become an agent, and in favor of civil liabilities for agents. So most of the things they're trying to implement are the right ones. They should have done it 5 years ago. That's the only problem. But we have lost 5 years. But it's welcome. But obviously on the cap. I mean, it's not a Spanish issue. It's a European Union competition law issue. We have nobody can tell me how much do I want to charge a client, because if I'm not, but if I would be the Messi of law, I could charge thousands of euros for my work, and nobody should impede me to do so. So obviously, I think this is against competition law. Probably Roberto knows much more of this, and I don't think that that rule will exist or will be in place for many time after the implementation. Honestly, it's completely against, and there is no proportionality. There are some criteria which you can establish a barrier to the competition, but I don't think that's the case. We're not under one of the exceptions under European Union competition law, so I don't believe there's going to be is gonna be enforced for a lot of time. And in any case, there will be ways to circumvent this rule. So, end of the day, why don't we really exercise a control in which, for example, if you charge 10-15% in a transaction, some questions should be answered. Are we talking about a free player? What was your added value in this transaction? And maybe you need to explain me why you are charging 15%. But banning or putting a cap is not the right answer, especially because, in my opinion, this will affect medium and small players. Because if you can only charge 3% of the salary, why would I care about a player who is earning 100,000 euros? To earn 3,000 euros, and I have to pay a lawyer, and I have to visit the player, and I mean, it makes no sense at all sometimes. So
it's a great point you make, Rodrigo, and I'm totally with you on all of those points that you make. You know, it's a real. But let's see what FIFA come out with, because they haven't actually put the, you know, it hasn't gone all through the committees yet, has it?
No. Okay, guys, we've reached time. We've had a little bit of injury time as well. Tony, I want to come to you, and Roberto, if you're still there as well, I'll come to you as well. Tony, your thoughts on the session, please.
Honestly, thank you so much to all the guys. You know, it was so insightful. I've really learned a lot myself. So thank you for that. You know, I think Simone's point about learning and finding out about the market, you know, this is just a first step if you've never done any business in Spain, but it's an important step I think you've made coming on this webinar, because at least now you've got the basics, and you know the basics of how to come into this market. And I think Simone mentioned language, and me and Ryan need to go to the language school because we are struggling on that.
We're struggling big time.
On that, yeah.
Roberto, your thoughts on the session, and I'll also just push you for a bit of information that what are you getting from Spanish agents into you in terms of what they want you to do with FIFA as well. Oh, can't hear you. We can't hear you, Roberto. No, can't hear you.
He's muted. He's muted. No.
Oh, no, I think he's muted. I think you've muted your own computer. Not to worry. Have you? Muted. Oh, here you go. Here you go. You're back. You're back.
Okay, so I wasn't muted, so I don't.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go for it.
No, okay. From Spanish agents, we're waiting for the feedback of the association as such. But what I understand from Spanish agents that I've spoken to now is that, funny enough, the biggest issue from a Spanish perspective that I received now is about the ideas and intentions for a clearinghouse. And transparency in payments. Obviously, there's support for transparency in payments, but on the other hand, it's also mentioned that if it's clear that some individuals have received relatively large sums, then for how much can you guarantee one person's security? You know, knowing that in the sector sometimes things occur that cannot live to see daylight. So that's one thing that I got back, but I'm waiting for the total feedback of the Spanish Agents Association. What I get out of this series is that it's becoming more and more clear to me that this is just the go-to event if you want to start doing business in a specific country, or if you want to be updated on the latest developments. And yeah, guys, it's fantastic to have Rodrigo, Simone, and Jose on board today to do this. I know the gents, especially Rodrigo and Simone, obviously. Yeah, so it's a no-brainer. I would just follow this series.
Thank you, Roberto.
Brilliant. Thank you. Just before I let everybody go, first of all, please check the chat. Because Ali has put everybody's LinkedIn address in there. Everybody that's on this panel, LinkedIn address is on there as well. And then I want to point everybody's attention to the next webinar in this series. And it's of particular interest to me, Tony, as a Wolverhampton Wanderers fan, as a Wolves fan. It's doing business in
Wolves
Portugal.
Portugal, aren't they? Aren't Wolves Portugal?
We are basically putting, well, in fact, just to tie it up, Wolves have actually bought out their sort of change strip is identical to the Portugal national team strip. So we're going to look forward to that one. We'll be announcing the speakers for that one just prior to Christmas in the coming week. So if you can join us for that one, that would be absolutely wonderful. I want to personally thank everybody that's been on the panel today, especially Simone, Jose, and Rodrigo. Absolutely fantastic. Ali, thanks for your work, and of course Roberto and Tony. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend, and we really look forward to seeing you all again next month. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.